And because you are not there last time, maybe I can have a recap. Then after that, we go to the topic that we are supposed to cover. I think I can share that so that you can see what we are supposed to have. Let me share, please, as you wait for others.
Okay.
Yes. So I think I can now share so that you can see it. Those are the notes that we are supposed to start with, first of all. And I have uploaded on your portal. So you are able to see them on your portal. And if you look at the topics that we have currently, we are supposed to start with the fire access methods, and I think it's not new to you because already you have covered ICT and ethics, or you have covered a topic maybe somewhere on ICT and ethics on these access methods. So I'll be able to go through them after we have a recap. Then after that, we are able to look at now the operating system or the OS security, the OS security. And that's why we need to look at now, why do we need security within the operating system? And why the users are able to secure the operating system. Remember, the operating system becomes a platform, a benchmark for all applications that we have. And if it becomes a benchmark, it means that we have a lot to do with the operating system. One, looking at the management, managing resources, looking at provision of input-output resources, provision of communication within the operating system, provision of maintaining any part of device or maybe any part of the execution within the operating system. So that is why we need to look at security within that. And if now I can be able to look at that, maybe I have some notes. Let me look at some notes that I have here so that maybe we can look at them. We need to look at the last topic that we were discussing. We were discussing on file structure. Maybe I can still share using that, which is on your portal. Where we were looking at the file structure before we did our cut, and I think maybe we did our cut. Just a minute. And if you go to your portal, there are some notes that has been shared. Then still there is a video for the last class that we attended. So please make sure that you go through that video. Still you can listen because it's very audible. You can clearly understand it. And if you look at the file system that we were looking at the NTFS because we said NTFS is the one that is now having all the provisions that we are supposed to have in the security. One, we need to look at now the provision of maintenance, the provision of recovery, and the provision of data backup, and many other that you have. And that's why we said we need to look at the NTFS and we need to look at how it is supposed to be organized. So how are we supposed to organize it? Because now we are looking at the structure of this operating system in terms of NTFS. So we looked at now the partition boot, we look at the master file table, we look at the system file, and we look at the file area. And I think I explained them. If you can go through your notes, there is somewhere I've explained them. And we said the file partition boot supposed to organize the volumes or start the sectors that we are supposed to have. And this is where now we start allocating the processes or jobs. And in this case, that's why we said the master file table, it's the one that now organizes all the things that we are supposed to have within them. And that's why we need to organize these files using the system files. Yeah, and that is why most of the operating system is able to use the NTFS. And when it is using the NTFS, it has the provision of security, mostly in a folder level. It has the provision of security as a recovery, as a backup. You can be able to retrieve data. And if you look at most of the functions,
you are currently the only person in this conference.
We looked at the encryption, we look at the disk quarters, we look at the pass point, we look at the volume mount points that are supposed to be used within this NTFS. So that is what we looked at in terms of the structure that we are supposed to have. But now our case is now to understand why should we always make sure that the security is provided every time you have this operating system. So I think up to now, maybe you can tell me whether you have tried to read those notes that I sent. Have you tried to read those notes on file structure? Farouk, have you tried to read them? Or have you read them? Yes? Farouk, I'm asking a question, please. Farouk, I'm asking a question. So it seems that Farouk, you have only connected and you have gone away from the site. Okay, I'll just continue. I don't have time to waste. So what we are saying, now we can start with the file access methods. And because this lesson is recorded, I don't have time to waste waiting for those people who have not joined. So if you look at now the file access methods, we need to look at why should we have this operating system and we cannot be able to organize on how files are supposed to be accessed. So that's why in the implementation of file management system, there is provision of file access methods or mechanisms. And one provision is what you call the sequential. So if you look at now the time that you're accessing files in your computer or in your phone, mostly we always look at now these methods that we have here. One of them is sequential access, maybe direct or stroke random access. The next one is what you call the index sequential access. And when you look at the sequential access, in this case, we are saying is that in which the record are accessed in some sequence. The information in the file is processed in order, one record after another. Meaning, suppose now I use a notepad. Suppose I use a notepad. Not even a notepad. Let me use a paint. It's good I use paint. If now this is now the allocation of these files that we have, and we need to allocate these files in this manner. We need to allocate these files in this manner, and we have already created some sections that are supposed to be used in the allocation. And these are the allocations that we have. So if this is the first allocation A, this is the second allocation B, C, and D. If you look at sequential file access method, we can now allocate file 1 the way it is here. We allocate it here. Then we allocate the next one that here, one after another, following each other. So in a simple way, we use what you call contiguous. We use what you call contiguous allocation. But remember that when you're allocating using sequential access method, it's not a must that this file that we are having here to have some relation with file A. So we can have file A without a relation with file B. We can have a file B with a relation with B. So it is not a must they be organized into a group of families that we have, but it must be followed to each other. So when you're accessing files in an operating system, it's the way we cannot see how we access file, but we physically organize them, but we don't know in a memory how we are seeing them or we can access them. So in this case, we must start from this file up to the last one. So suppose we are accessing D, so we cannot bypass this D, this ABC, so that we can go to D. We must move from A, from B, from C, then up to D. And the moment we are accessing the files like that, now we find that it is very easy for you to always organize the file with that access. So in most cases, when you're using sequential, it's mostly used to access file in a given fashion. And it's very easy for you now to access them in a manner that the users will be able to understand that file A is accessed. But one problem that we have within this access is time. So time is a considerate because now we can take a long time to access files, and it is not easier to always make sure that now the files are accessed in a good manner. But the next thing is what you call the random access method. And when you're using the random access methods, we always access files anyhow. So we go directly to a specific file. So if now I'm using the same specifications here, or the same structure here, now I can say I'm accessing the file that I require. So if I require file D, it's not a must I pass through ABC. So I can pass through D directly. So it means time has been reduced. So here there is more time, but here we have trying to less time. So there is less time in access. There is less time in access, but more time here in access. There is more time in access here, but there is less time in access. So if you look at this, that's why we are saying each record has its own address on the file, with by the help of which it can be directly accessed for reading or writing. The records need not be in any sequence within the file. So we are looking at now, there is no sequence of organization, but here we have some sequence of organization, meaning we are following a certain contiguous allocation. But here we don't have to follow that. So you can go directly to the file that you require. So if I require D, it's not a must I pass ABC. I can go directly to D. So which now reduces time wastage. The next one is what you call the indexed. If you look at this one, in most of the access, we always say it uses the key fields. It uses the key fields when you're using what you call the sequential access. But this is the one that uses what you call the index, the moment we are looking at now the access. And as the name suggests, so here we use index. Use index. Now, let's say that we have this file. We have 0, we have 1, we have 2, we have 3. So this now becomes the key fields. This becomes the index, sorry. We have index 0, we have index 1, we have index 2, we have index 3. But inside index 0, we have a key field. Maybe this one we can call it K, this one we can call it a key field M, this one we can call it a key field N. So inside the first allocation, you can still have L. Now, when you use indexes or indexed sequential method, what we are saying is that we can be able to allow more files in this access. So we are allowing more files in this access. It's not like a sequential where we have only one file. So here we can have many files because now whatever separates is now what you call the key fields. So we can have millions of key fields inside the location. So here we can say we are allowing, so we allow more access of files. We allow more access of files. Now, in this case, so we need more security. We need more security. And the security can only be provided with the topic that we are supposed to cover here. And if you look at the previous allocations, we said we have these allocations, so I will not be able to repeat them. So we did them with a presentation of the diagram that we had, and it was clear or clearly stated in a manner that we are supposed to have. So for these ones, I will not repeat them in the file allocations. So up to now, we can be able to understand that we have file access methods, and these file access methods are able now to organize in a manner that the users will be able to understand them in the access. So for this case, maybe we can go directly to what you call the file security. And in the file security, mostly we call it the operating system security. Now, what do we understand by the word security? So I think for now, we need to understand that security is one way of provisions of what you call protection. You're protecting system to computer system resources. And when you talk about resources, what are these resources that we are talking about? Such as what? The CPU, such as the memory, such as the disk. So most of these resources are CPU, memory, disks that are provided within the operating system. So when I say one of the resources that I am supposed to have is input-output, processes, memories, that is the correct answer that I can be able to give to that. So software program are most important data information stored in the computer system. So we have added programs and data. Remember that now this operating system is able to provide efficient access, it's able to provide efficient storage of data, and is the one that is giving us the platform that is allowing us to access data, that is allowing us to maintain data, and many other functions that we have within the operating system. So we need to look at now, as part of the security, is able to provide match of executions. And this match of executions that we are having, we only provide them through security. And one security, why do we need to have security? If a computer program is run by an authorized user, that is insecurity. Then he or she may cause severe damage to the computer or the data stored in it. So which are these damages? One, there might be loss of data. Two, there might be viruses that are invading on these informations that we have, maybe worms, maybe we can have Trojans, maybe we can have some hackers that are now trying to hack the systems because of insecurity that we are providing within this operating system. So that's why when you are buying an operating system, every time you must look at now the security mechanisms. You must always understand that security is one aspect that we are having. And remember, when you are trying to access the files, as I have explained here, we need to understand that all the security provided should be able to make sure that file access is not violated. So we should always make sure that the file access is not violated, the file allocation still is not violated in that. And that's why we are saying one way that we can be able to provide the security is through provision of what you call authentication. Maybe provision of one-time password, maybe program threats, maybe doing away with these program threats, maybe doing away with these system threats, maybe computer security and classification. I don't want to dwell on this so much because now this is covered in ICT. But for this case, how should we provide authentication? So what are the mechanisms, or maybe how will you be able to understand that this person is authorized? Because we are looking at now authorization. Authentication means it is identifying each user or system. So we understand who is supposed to access the file. How will you be understood that you are supposed to access this file? The only way that you can understand a person is supposed to access the file is the provision of security through password, and this password that you provide is able to work within the requirement. If this is a password that is supposed to use some characters, now automatically it has used those characters, and you can be able to access them in the access. So that's why you provide password. And when you provide password, you can provide one-time password, you can provide a long-term password or a short-term password. And for this case, we always understand that in
You are
operating
currently the only
system,
person in this conference.
you are able now to provide various mechanisms that you are supposed to have in the access. So in this case, authorization, look at now password. And that's why we have the three ways that you can be able to provide this security. And one way that you provide security is through what you call the password. Maybe you can use the card key, the card or the keys. I think this password is not new to you, because when you look at the password, this is when you register the users and the password that you can be able to use within a given time. The user card, the user need to punch card in a card slot. Maybe that is when you slot in a card somewhere and you are able to access whatever you are supposed to access at that point, and you are able to move with the speed of the access. Then you can use the user's attribute. Maybe use the fingerprint, use the eye retina pattern, or maybe you can use the signature that allows the person to access the information. So that's why we find that in operating system, you always have some provision of security as a mode of access. Maybe you can have your own password. Maybe you can write any other data. But I want to explain others without using this one-time password. And I will be able to end after this. This is where you have a one-time password. You enter once, but now automatically you cannot re-enter. Maybe you are given 24 hours, maybe you are given 2 hours, maybe you are given maybe 2 minutes to access that password. And maybe if you access that, you can be able to get whatever you are supposed to get. So most of the threats that you find within the operating systems are the Trojan horse. And I think Trojan horse is not new to you, because these are programs that are created by the user who can be able to access it. Trapdoor, logic, virus. I know that there is a difference between a virus and a worm. And when you talk about a virus, these are programs that attaches themselves on a program, but a worm is a program that replicates itself, which now the user has to make sure that the program is rectified in the access. So in this case, or at this platform, let us try to understand that now we are talking about the systems. We are able now to work with the systems in the access. And mostly, we have to look at now how the system is supposed to access files in that. So there are some threats that are going through the system. We have worm, port scanning, where maybe the hackers can be able to detect the vulnerability of the system and be able to work with that vulnerability. Then we have denial of service. Maybe somebody has entered a password that is wrong to you for your account. And then after that, automatically when you try to log in, now it cannot allow you to access. So you become a civilian at that point. But we have others that we call a firewall. We have what you call a firewall. And the moment we are talking about a firewall, so in most cases we say that this is a program that always control the access of programs to users. And when it is controlling access to users, it is provided on a system. So that's why when you're installing an operating system, there is that firewall. And I think you can be able to see, mostly maybe we can see whether we have our own firewall. Here, check on firewall status. And when you check on firewall status, you can see there is private network, Windows Defender firewall state is on, incoming connection, block all connection to apps that are not in the list. So it is able to block them and maybe activate that. So guest you can look at now the Windows Defender file stated it's on, but it is on the network that I'm using. So if you can see the active public network that I'm using, the notification states notify me when the Windows Defender file will block a new app. So that's why when we are trying to install some applications, you find that most of them has been blocked. It is because now the firewall that you are working with has already blocked some applications. So you cannot use them in that time. And that's why we need to look at now, we have blocked in a manner that the user cannot be able to maybe use it in a way that program will be changed. So that's why we have system maintainers, we have security that you can provide, view security, maybe view windows, maybe you can view security. That is part of security that is provided, domain network, private network, public network. We have many provisions that has already been provided to this platform and many others. So that's why we are saying firewall is one of the vital or important part of securing data that we have. So I think for now, we can stop at that point. Go back to what I have discussed. And I was saying we need to discuss on fire access method, and I think it's not new to you. So I think if you go back to your video, you'll be able to see them. So I'll be able to rush when explaining this. And if you look at the fire access methods, mechanisms, we have said we have sequential, we have direct, and we have index. So that's why I said that in access, we'll be able to look at sequential, and in sequential, that is where we organize files one after the other. Then when you look at nowadays, that's why we say it uses more time when you're accessing it, because we have to move from one to another. And I was explaining using this diagram. So if it is A and you want to access D, you have to move from A up to D, A, B, C. By the moment you're using what you call direct, I've said it uses rest time. And that is the point where now you move directly to this D. So it's not a must you pass through A, B, C. You move directly to D, and you can be able to access the file that you have. But when you're using sequential, I have said you can look at now the use of index. These are the points that I have added. You can use the use of index. And when you talk about the index, you're talking about index 0, 1, 2, 3. And in this case, for this now, you can have A, B, C. So in this, inside it, you have a key field there. And the key field there is maybe K or L. So you are allowing more files access. So that's why we are saying we have more file access. So you can have more files and allow more access of files, need more security. That's one of the disadvantage, because if you have more files, you require more security. And that's why we have said it works together with the space allocation. And these are the things that we have already talked about, the file allocations. And that's why we have said we need to look at security. And when you look at security, we need to look at security in terms of authentication. And in this terms of authentication, I've said you need to look at now the password. Which password are you entering in your computer system? So that's why we find that in your folder, you can provide security in folder level. You can provide security maybe in a certain file when you're accessing them. Or you can have what you call the one-time password. And when you talk about the one-time password, you're talking about the random numbers. So that's why you find that in most of the systems, you can be able to provide a password for 2 minutes, for 20 minutes, for 2 days, for 24 hours, and so forth. So in this case, security is one of the important parts that we are supposed to have. Then after that, we have said there are some threats that are occurring on a program, and there are threats that are occurring on a system. One threat that is occurring on a program is the Trojan horse. And these are traps that you find within the login credentials. Like now, you can be, maybe you are having your your WhatsApp message, the moment you are typing, maybe I'm receiving a message from you. So in that case, I can be able to see what you are communicating. At that point, you're using what you call a Trojan horse. Then we have said we have the logic bombs and trap doors. These are mostly used in a program. You code a program, you create a trap door. In that somebody who is trying to access a file now automatically will be able to access a file, but you'll be able to see somebody who is accessing it. So you use that. Then when you're using the system threats, we have said we have a worm. So remember there is a difference between a worm and a virus. A virus attaches on a document, but this one replicates itself when it is executed. So that's why we have denial of service. Mostly this denial of service is mostly applicable because when you're using the denial of service is where you deny somebody's working some application. Maybe you can deny somebody from accessing a certain site. You can deny somebody from accessing a certain program, etc. on that. And that's why you find that this is very vital in that. So the only thing that can provide this, we have said, is what you call the firewall. So this is one of the security mechanisms or security control that you can have on a system because it's providing security to different files. And that's why I was giving an example. Maybe you have a firewall in your computer. You must have your firewall. If I check the firewall status, I find that now I have the private networks and the public network. In a public network, I've used a certain network which is supposed to be used, and then maybe I have used a state which is on. So within this, you are able to protect. So if you find it is on, it has already protected the private and the public network. That is what we have discussed in this case. And that's why we understand that when you're using some files or security, you must look at now what are we providing in a security. Are we providing security in a folder, or are we providing security in the entire file that we have? So I think this is not new to you. I had already discussed it because now you have joined very late. Remember, we have already taken more than 58 minutes when you're accessing that. So I have already done a recording of that 2 minutes. So I know you have already, you have joined late. So please, can you maybe communicate and maybe we communicate on these issues of security and so that we can maybe proceed. Do you have any issue on security? I know it is not a new term because you have already covered in ICT and ethics. So I can see Anne Masharia has already switched over because I'm asking a question. So Michelle, I think what you'll do, maybe you can raise an issue on that. Can you raise an issue? Maybe you can add some points there.
No, I don't have any.
Okay, so please, can you tell your friend that this was my last class for these topics that we were supposed to cover. The next class will be a revision class. And I'm assuming that everybody will come to this class. And remember, there are those people who are asking for notes. And I think there is one person who is asking for notes. And because of security, I will not be able to mention the name. I have posted all the notes on this portal. Hope you can see them, Michelle. Can you see the notes?
Yes.
Yes, so please, can you tell your friends the notes are posted on your portals. So if they cannot access the portal, now I don't know where they will be able to get the notes because I cannot send 2 parts of notes. It's better I say if you are attending my class, maybe we can negotiate on that. But if you are not attending my class, how can I negotiate sending notes that I have already posted? That means there are some students who are not accessing the portal. And remember, I have said even if we come back from this pandemic, or maybe even if we come back to our normal classes before the exam, I will not start from where we left last semester. I will start from revision, because that is now the next topic that we are supposed to look at. Although that is the next thing that we are supposed to look at. So please tell your friends, that they are supposed to attend these classes. They are very vital. Remember, when you will be doing your NEC exam, whatever we are discussing right now, it will be examinable. And I say, if you pass through or you go through my notes, you don't have anybody to blame when you fail, and you cannot fail in my class, please. So I think for now, maybe you can we can go to the chat room. So maybe I'm looking forward maybe to give a quiz that you can be able to do. Then after that, maybe we'll be able to raise some questions. Today, I think I will be there. I'm hoping that the internet will not be an issue today, like last time. So please, you give me 2 minutes or 5 minutes. I set some questions, and those questions, you'll be able to answer them to test what you have already gone. So I will give you 10 minutes or 5 minutes to read. Then after that, you'll be able to see the questions that I'll set. So you read the notes that I have already posted. Maybe you can listen the video if it has already been recorded, of which it takes time to record. You can be able to access that. So Masharia Ann, do you have any question? Because now I had already explained this and I have repeated again. So Masharia Ann, do you have any question? So it seems that Masharia is not around. Ameshaenda. Okay, so the next thing that we are supposed to look at, we always look at emerging trends. And when we look at emerging trends of an operating system, we always look at emerging trends as those things that has assisted the operating system to work. And if you go to introduction, there is a part of the introduction that we discussed on characteristics of a modern operating system. One of them, we said we have pipelining. The second one, we said we have object-oriented. Then we said we have multi-threading. So those are emerging trends that you have in most of the operating system. So you can look at now the current operating system that we are having. One of them that we have CentOS. Currently, we have the current operating system. We have like current that are in the market. We have CentOS. We have Mandriva operating system. We have Fedora. We have Ubuntu, and maybe currently now we have the Android. And I have seen that nowadays we are using Android. We are using Android in desktop operating system. We are still using. We have other Mac OS, and we have Apple iOS. Those are now the current operating system that we have, either in mobile applications or in desktop applications or in that. So if you look at CentOS, these are versions of Linux. So we have Ubuntu. So these are the current Linux operating systems or Unix operating system that we have. This for mobile application. I've said this one is now currently used within the desktops. This one is used within the desktops. Here we have Apple iOS, which is used in mobile application. We have this one, which is still used in mobile phone, and many other. We have Windows, of which Windows was the Windows OS, which is mostly used in mobile phone, but it was another operating system that was mostly used in those old days. So these operating systems are using what you call pipelining. They are still using what you call the object-oriented approach. They are still using object-oriented approach. They are using what you call multi-threading approach, and many others that we have. So you can look at those things that we have within the operating system. So for now, maybe you can understand up to that we have emerging trends. Emerging trends are things that are coming in the market. Which are things? So I want you to go to, you do a research. So do a research. Maybe do a research. So research on modern operating system. Modern operating system, maybe why they are important, and the classifications of these, because we have classification. So that is a research question that you're supposed to do. Maybe you understand what we mean by the emerging trends that we have within the operating system. So Michelle, I think now Michelle and Anne, maybe we can move to the chat. And I want first of all to pose the questions. So first of all, go through the notes that I have already sent. Then after that, you'll be able to do some revision after this, after you do a quiz that you're supposed to do after this. So is it possible now we can move back to quiz?
Okay.
Can you move to quiz, Michelle?
Yes.
Okay, so let us meet there. So if you are not been so if you cannot access my portal at that point, so please can you SMS me, Sidio? You SMS me, please. So let's meet there. And that video will be able to assist you.
Okay, okay.
So can you go back to your portal and then you read those notes? Then there is a quiz that you're supposed to do. You do it. Then after doing it, we are supposed to create a chat room so that we can now try to communicate using a chat room. Sidio?
Okay, so.
Yeah.